and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Brian.
I'm Kaila.
And I'm Josh, and today I feel like I'm in a game of one of these things is not like the others. I'm with a married couple today, but it is my favorite Literary Gladiator married couple.
Is there another one?
I don't think nobody else has brought their spouse onto the show.
Still a compliment.
But it's great to have you back on, Brian.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you.
And Kaila, how is Drunk in the Library coming along?
It's going well. It's going really well. If you guys haven't checked it out, please do. I'm sure Josh would let me link it in the comments.
Oh, absolutely. What kind of things have you been talking about on your channel?
Oh, we've got some Edgar Allan Poe. We've got the North Berwick witch trials. We've got what else have we talked about? The Fermi paradox. We have an upcoming episode on Mothman coming out. That one's going to be super exciting. Just a wide array.
Definitely worth checking out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we're going to be going over something that you definitely find being worth discussing, and that is a book called Annihilation by Vandermeer.
Same copy.
It's the only one I think. There may be a hardcover version of this, but that's about it. But you have a discussion starter, Kaila?
Yes. So my question for you guys is, the narrator in this book has a very specific way of speaking. From what you learn about her in the book and what you can kind of get from your own insight, do you think that she is a reliable narrator or an unreliable one?
She's an awkward one.
She is.
I agree.
I think that some of that may have to do with a dystopian element of how people are structured in this period of time.
Okay.
But I think that the interactions that people have with one another are just terrible.
Yeah.
I think that, it's interesting that the people that were involved, it was the anthropologist and the linguist that backed out.
Mm-hmm.
The psychologist just decided she was going to man the fort, and she only made one other appearance. The surveyor was supposed to be the one that was her partner, but that chemistry was just non-existent.
Yeah, I think a lot of that boils down to the biologist, because she's very, concise. Like, I feel like this whole thing almost reads like a lab report.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
The way I felt was everybody was they weren't concerned enough. Mm-hmm. There was this huge mystery about what was going on in Area X. And, the way they were speaking, the way they were going about everything was too, they weren't concerned enough. They weren't scared enough. They were just... There
was very little emotion involved.
Yeah, very little emotion, right.
The biologist herself was very emotionless. She showed some kind of concern for her husband when he came back from Area X, but when she was going through his journal, he was talking about her not being there. She would rather go out for her walks, when in actuality she was going into the wilderness.
Yeah.
When she's talking about the little puddle that turned into a pond, that's fascinating. The way that she's into that. But as far as the interaction is concerned, it's non-existent, and sometimes, with the writing itself, I'm led to believe, I'm not sure if this work has a bit of an identity crisis.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part of the book was all the flashbacks, because I feel like
that's where the emotion.
Yeah, that's where the emotion came
Yeah.
from. That's where more of the emotion was, rather than in the present.
Yeah.
The question, though, is this supposed to be a work about emotion?
Right. It's
what is driving this book, and I think that there's supposed to be that twist that's supposed to, or this alternate perspective and approach that is driving this book, but I don't think he's dedicated enough when it comes to executing it properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I think it was. I think if this book had been written by anybody else, you could have gotten a really emotional, heartfelt approach to Area X, which is kind of like this weird, mysterious area that I think under normal circumstances somebody would be feeling very scared, very unsure, very just uncertain.
Right.
But because you're looking at it through the perspective of this really concise, observant biologist character, you're getting this like really weird, unemotional like approach to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's someone like her. It's necessary because most of the people bailed.
Right.
So they either bailed very quickly, or like her husband, he came back and was almost like a PTSD.
Yeah. I also.
It wasn't even him. Yeah.
I don't think. I don't think that was him. I think that was
Yeah.
the duplicate that was sent back, because she's reading his journal and he's like, yeah, we saw our duplicates wander by, and she is completely like nonplussed by that. I don't even think it surprised her to hear that they were duplicated.
That and the fact that he said he was going to that island.
Yeah.
And it made it seem like he was never coming back.
Yeah.
So
even she herself had that. She had that idea that she would not be coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think as different as it is from the movie, because I remember we saw the movie a while ago. It's incredibly different from the movie, but I think that's how the movie ended, where like she never left the area, but like her weird doppelganger.
Yeah.
Because I was doing research on the rest of the series. I'm sure
I think that's fair. It was a very weird book.
Yeah, you've read the whole series?
I read the first half of the second book, but I'm going to pick them back up after reading it again. I feel like it's something you have to like read a couple of times to really get.
Yeah, I would say that much. And it seems like, from my understanding, it's different accounts.
Yes.
Not the we're not following the biologists.
Right.
Another interesting concept is that idea that they lose their personhood when they go on the expedition. They're referred to by their titles and not by who they are as people. They don't see them. They don't see themselves or one another as individuals, but by their role, which that in itself is quite dystopian and in some ways horrifying too.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting too that maybe apart from the biologist, the role that they're supposed to be isn't an accurate representation of what they are. Like, so the psychologist isn't really a psychologist. She doesn't do any sort of therapy. All she does is like hypnotize, really.
Right.
The surveyor isn't doing any sort of surveying.
Like
She's basically military.
Right.
Even the anthropologist, like, we see very little anthropological interest in anything she says or does.
Right.
I mean, the psychologist she evaluates them, but that's as far as for that particular mission.
And it also makes you think too, if she's the leader of this group and her main goal is to evaluate them, then what is the main purpose of the mission? Is it just to see what people are like? Is it less about Area X and more about people in Area X?
Maybe. I mean, they did mention it's spreading, so maybe they thought it'll eventually just take over, and they wanted to know what life would be like.
It reminds me a lot of The Ruins by Scott Smith.
Okay.
Where the land and the non-human beings, the plant life, and those particular elements take on an antagonizing role. They're the villains per se, depending on how you're looking at it.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't like The Ruins. I thought it was I thought the human characters were just so useless and annoying. And I think that here it was only a little bit better, because the characters here, you have the psychologist she's dormant.
Yeah.
She makes, aside from the evaluations, she makes 2 appearances. Wants to let them know that she's manning the fort and not going with them. And another time, pretty much to let them know she's dying.
Yeah.
So
all of the characters are very much like non-characters. None of them have any personality or like anything that separates them from anybody else in the book.
Right.
And I don't know if that's a case, if that's intentional or if it's just poor writing.
I don't know. I've never read
anything.
Yeah, I've never read anything else by Jeff Vandermeer, so I can't say with any kind of certainty either way. But I would be interested in like reading the rest of his works and seeing what it feels like. I also wanted to see if you had the same impression that I did, specifically about like the tower tunnel. It reminded me very much of House of Leaves.
In how people perceive things?
Yeah, and just like the feeling of like it being never ending. Did you get like the same kind of impression?
I think it was very vaguely
I agree.
approached, because the biologist saw it one way, I think the psychologist in particular saw it another.
Yeah.
So the fact
they didn't really touch on that too much.
Yeah, they in the beginning they did.
Yeah.
But not to the point that it really stood out.
Right.
Okay.
Did you see it in a particular way?
I think that I was able to grasp the idea of it being a tower versus like an underground tower versus a tunnel, but I found it interesting because like the biologist had such a severe, like she was so fixated on that, on it being a tower versus a tunnel, that she kept like correcting all the characters and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting.
It's interesting that that's the interaction they have. The
Yeah.
very little interaction.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
it's almost all are centered around that.
How would we rate it? 0 to 5 stars, half stars permitted. Brian?
I'll go 3.5. The mystery kept me interested, and I'll want to keep going. But some parts were dry, and some parts, had me hooked. So about average.
I'm gonna say 3.5 too. I feel like it was a pretty interesting novel if you're into like surrealist fiction. But I agree. I think that if you're not into this specifically, I think you're gonna get bored real fast.
Yeah. I'm going to go 2.5. This work had an identity crisis as far as paper-thin characters. I think that there were particular moments that were attention-grabbing as far as the biologist talking about her surroundings and her fascination with them is concerned, and the way that she was a very introverted central character. Her interactions with other characters were non-existent, and very awkwardly so. There was no relation with the surveyor, no interaction. The psychologist could have been a very long-lasting character, but she had the consistency of a flat piece of chewing gum.
Alright, that's fair.
After reading this, I really don't want to continue with the series, and I really would only reapproach this if I was looking to evaluate it again.
Alright.
So
This is not the first time you haven't liked one of my picks. Although the first time, neither of us liked the pick.
Wuthering Heights.
Yes.
Yeah, that was probably one.
That
of
was
the,
awful.
Yeah, that was one of the. But to be fair, I've liked plenty of your other picks.
That's
like
true.
The Nightingale.
Yeah.
If you'd like to check out Annihilation, here is my copy, and here's Kayla's copy.
They're the same copy.
And Brian doesn't have a copy. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel, and be sure to join us next time. For now, keep reading. Hi there, this is Josh, and on the next episode of Literary Gladiators, Larry, Kaila, Ari, and I will be discussing Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. If you like what you see on this channel, please support us on our Patreon, for more money means more material for this channel. Thank you for tuning in, and for now, and as always, we encourage you to keep reading.